My name is Kaleb Abbott. I'm an optometrist and assistant professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine, where I practice in our dry eye clinic. So I gave a lecture at AOA all about burnout, myself and my colleague Neda Gioia. And really my interest in this topic originated back in 2022 and 2023 when I myself was feeling unbelievably burnt out. And I started looking around thinking, is this a me problem? Is this a optometry problem? Is this an industry problem, a healthcare problem? And I said, are other people experiencing the symptoms that I'm experiencing, and am I doing something wrong here? So we actually launched a nationwide study at the University of Colorado where we surveyed about 1,300 or 1,400 optometrists in the country, trying to get an idea of how much burnout is prevalent and what are the risk factors and protective factors with burnout. And we found that burnout, unfortunately, is incredibly common amongst optometrists. About 54% of optometrists experience symptoms of burnout in the United States. I think the number was higher than I originally expected. So we do know in healthcare in general, there's about 2x the degree of burnout compared to really all other professions in the United States. But usually the numbers that we see in healthcare is about 35 to 50% of healthcare practitioners are experiencing symptoms of burnout, and we found more than that. We found 54% of optometrists are experiencing symptoms of burnout. We can't necessarily say we know exactly what is causing the burnout, but we can identify certain risk factors or things that are associated with the burnout. Some of the top things that we found is, the setting that you're at. So for instance, we found that optometrists practicing in departments of ophthalmology experience a lot of burnout. People that are practicing in integrated care settings like the VA or Kaiser have more burnout. And then we found that optometrists that are practicing in private practices, be it small, medium, or large private practices, have the least amount of burnout of all optometrists. Also, optometrists practicing at optometry schools tend to have less burnout than the other settings. And then if we want to think about other risk factors associated with burnout, it's really all about how much time you are spending in clinical care. The more half days per week that you're in the clinic, the more likely it is that you're going to be burnt out. The more patients you see in a half day, the more likely it's going to be that you're burned out. So in general, we found that optometrists that had severe burnout were practicing in clinic 4.2 days a week. Those with kind of mild or moderate burnout were in clinic 4 days a week. Those with no burnout were in clinic 3.8 days per week. This is such an important topic. So we found that there is a huge discrepancy between men and women. We found that men in general were protected a little bit from burnout, with only about 41% of men experiencing symptoms of burnout. But when it came to women, it was about 61% of women experiencing symptoms of burnout. And this led to us actually doing a follow-up study that we entitled Exploring Gender Differences in Professional Well-Being between men and women. And we found that these differences, unfortunately, are dramatic. So in general, women experience more burnout, more stress. They feel like they have less control over their workload, that their values aren't aligning with leadership, and so on and so forth. Pretty much in every single category that we investigated, women fared worse than men, with one exception, that women are actually more proficient when it comes to EHR than men. So our initial study was really trying to assess the prevalence of burnout and maybe risk factors or protective factors. So we don't necessarily know what to do about the burnout yet, but we do have certain ideas of what may be associated with more burnout or less burnout. So I think, from an individual standpoint, trying to just see if you can be in clinic a little bit less if you are starting to experience symptoms of burnout. I myself, when I was my most burnt out, I was seeing patients 4.5 days a week. I ended up dropping that to 4, which ended up helping me a lot. And now I'm at clinic about 3.75 days per week. And to me, that made a huge difference. I would rather see more patients in the half days, but physically be in clinic less. And that tremendously helped my burnout. So I think trying to have a good work-life balance. I think another thing that we've tended to find in our data is that the optometrists that are trying to do it all. They're doing primary care optometry. They have to know things about binocular vision and neuro and dry eye and glaucoma and retina, that this is incredibly stressful. It's really hard to be good at everything. We in general found that it was the optometrists that had a niche, the optometrists that focused on certain things clinically that seemed to have less burnout. So trying to find the things that you're actually passionate about, trying to tailor your schedule to seeing really mostly those patients, maybe not entirely those patients, but have your schedule bend in that direction. I think that this can really help optometrists out when it comes to their job satisfaction and their professional well-being. We decided to do a third follow-up study because we found that our first two studies were incredibly depressing. So our third study was on job satisfaction, and this study is being reviewed right now, so it's actually unpublished at this time. But we found that even though most optometrists are experiencing symptoms of burnout, 68% of optometrists actually report being satisfied with their jobs. So this means that we're out there, we're working hard, we're helping patients, maybe we're burnt out, but most optometrists are still satisfied. And I think that that is really, really important. So we need to try to reduce our burnout. It's not an excuse to do nothing, but still understand that this is a great profession, this is a great career, and most of us out there are still satisfied.